It is quite the outline that we have. And once again, I am collaborating with the one and only Mr. Mena Logwar with the research. Okay. And, I guess you could say a couple other people with honorable mention. So I want to present this. I'm going to go ahead and do this where you can see it. And we're actually going to start off with a combination dip metaverse, level 8. So kind of tie it all in, right? So there are going to be two key segments in regards to this. And then even from the beginning and at the end, we'll tie that in as well. So let's just jump into it. Here it is. This comes from the one and only Mr. Level 8. Shout out to him. Gone ahead and interpret this from Japanese into English. Level 8, what does he have? He says, did we mention life insurance? Think about this for a second. We know when it comes to Jasmy, they, of course, have entered into finance democracy. Now, we talked about the whole thing of, cross-border payments. Some people don't really take Jasmy serious in that regard yet. We talked about the whole thing of, could there be a Ripple Jasmy thing in the future? Yes. It's not right now. And we talked about how was that so? Well, if you guys remember, and if you're new to the channel, go into the recorded video section, the collaboration with Will Fix, and it literally in the thumbnail says Ripple and Jasmy. It was a deep dive. Well, this isn't about cross-border payments necessarily, but life insurance. So level 8 has something here. He says he's going to cancel his dollar-denominated insurance at the beginning of the new year. Why would he want to do that? Well, if anything, look what he also quotes here. This is straight from Dip Metaverse. And this is his 7th update in regards to his conversation with Hara-san from when he visited the Jasmy management office in Japan. Yeah, I hate to let down all the, Jasmy scam people out there. But basically, yeah, there's a real office, and he did go there, and he took some pictures. I don't know if he took video, but we do thank Mr. Dip Metaverse. So he says fan tokens. Hara-san mentioned a couple times that they have a good relationship with Shoshisha, if I'm pronouncing that right, who has published certain anime manga such as One Piece. My friend Yanni, that's his name, Yanni. He's in DPG, my gaming group. He loves One Piece. He's always talking about One Piece. I'm not into anime. Hey, you're into anime? Great. There's nothing wrong with it. We all have our different interests. But he loves One Piece. So this really stood out for me. Naruto, also Bleach, and Dragon Ball. I know about Dragon Ball Z and all that. But this could also open up many doors for NFT fan tokens and allow for a pivot outside of the sports fan tokens. I am more bullish on this than I was for the sports fan tokens. I'm just going to throw that out there. I know some of you guys are not the biggest fans of Chili's. I still of course, hold Chili's. But I do like the idea that Jasmy does do the whole thing with the fan tokens for Seigen Tosu, right, with sports. But when I think of mass adoption, to me, this stuff, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball Z, and all that, is so much more popular than obviously the Seigen Tosu fan token. Nothing against that team, but that's a reality. Hara-san mentioned that one of the Jasmy team members used to work at PlayStation. We did that deep dive on the old channel. And of course, designed the logo. I went into all the details about that. Hara mentioned that they have a good relationship, of course, with PlayStation. Awesome, right? You want to hear things like that. This was covered before by others in the community. Hara re-emphasized it. That's good. You want to see him embrace it, not, try to hide away from it. On a side note, like he says, they could use the graphics department from Sony for fan token visual applications. Hara mentioned the shadows from the Seigen Tosu dancing video in the previous tweet. And also, Hara did mention that they will build use cases in the insurance and banking sectors. And listen to this, because now we're finally getting back to that outline about the whole thing of Ripple and Jasmy. Just hear me out. Akanumu, what a name, sorry, San has a great deal of experience in this space from having worked, of course, at Aeon, if I pronounce that wrong, Aeon Bank and Aeon Life Insurance, which has some relationship, of course, with Sony Bank and Sony Life. Hara also told Kakanumu-san that he also had a good relationship with FSA in Japan. who also currently has a good relationship in FSA in Japan. Well, it's obviously Jasmy with Genki Oda because he's part of FSA and the JVCEA. And this last tidbit, Ando-san, as in Kunitake Ando, had a grand vision to have everyone in Japan use Jasmy coin in the future, and Ando-san is very confident in Jasmy's success. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. All right. If anything, we're going to explain a little bit more about this. So what I want to do now is I want to bring you guys to this, and basically speaking, it's going to be like a flow of beginning to end and going back and so on. So I don't want to jump around too much, but I do want to give credit where credit's due. Again, please give this guy a follow. This is Mena Lagwar. If you're using the X platform, he can be followed at Mena Lagwar, MENELAGUAR. He only has 289 followers. He deserves a way bigger following. Okay, so this is the guy that's teamed up with me with the research. Let's jump into a little bit more about this. So for one, excuse me, I'll turn off this fan for a second. We're going to jump into some of the key findings, of course, from Mena Lagwar. And in the process of doing so, there's quite a bit to basically mention. And, you know, the way I look at it is I was just, you know, just so impressed with all his key findings. And it really allowed us to kind of go down a rabbit hole, if you will, when it came to all this. So I'm just trying to pull this up and excuse me. Here we go. I meant to have this available earlier for you guys. I'll chop it up a little bit later, but basically speaking, there's a specific professor that you want to pay attention to, if you will. And he is part of the Sony team, basically speaking. So let me just pull this up for a second. I almost got it up here. Here we go. There we go. This is really, really good stuff, and I really appreciate the detailed information that Mena Lagwar basically has. You know, that's the bottom line. Okay, so basically, it's like this. Okay, Sony CSL. All right, Computer Science Laboratories. I want you to hear this out for a second. It's a department that's connected to the technology, or all this technology in several different ways. For one, Sony CSL is a research and development organization. If you're wondering where I'm going with this, I'm reading the notes from Mena Lagwar, bringing it to you guys. And they aim to create a new scientific knowledge and innovative technologies that enrich, of course, human life. Now, that's basically everything that Jasmy is also looking to do, right? Again, guys, the bigger picture of Society 5.0, smart cities, all this stuff. Some of the research topics that Sony CSL is involved in are related to spatial sound technology, and here's some of those examples. Spatial sound field rendering. This is a technology that reproduces realistic sound field in a virtual or augmented reality environment. Some of you guys, of course, use your VR headsets. There's also AR, right, for augmented reality. It basically uses a combination of sound sources, microphones, and also, of course, headphones. Sony CSL has developed a method to optimize the sound field rendering for individual listeners based on, of course, their head and ear shapes, right? You know, if you're like King Charles, you know, you might need a little bit, never mind. All right. And ear shapes as well as their preferences and, of course, moods. There's, of course, sound field analysis, and synthesis. Now, this specific technology analyzes and synthesizes sound fields from various sources, such as music, speech, environmental sounds. Sony CSL, of course, has developed and manipulated the spatial and timbral features of sound fields using deep neural networks and signal processing techniques. Also keep in mind, this can be used for applications such as sound enhancement, sound separations, of course, sound synthesis, like we just said. Sound interaction design. This is a technology that designs and evaluates sound interactions for various scenarios. Obviously, gaming. These are gaming. This is a gaming headset, technically. This specific one is at 7.1, but I used to have another one in the past that was 7.1. So you guys are familiar with some of this stuff. But also, it creates education, entertainment. Sony CSL developed a method, you were not aware of it, to create and evaluate sound interactions that are engaging, expressive, meaningful, using combination of other user studies, prototyping, and also evaluation methods. Very, very true. These technologies are related to Sony's spatial sound. I know this is a lot to get into, and we'll show you some visuals here in a second. But it's related to Sony spatial sound technologies, basically, the bottom line. It is used for creating and delivering 360 reality audio and musical experience that relies on, or allows, I should say, users to immerse themselves into the whole thing of a three-dimensional sound field. Sony CSL research development can contribute to improving and expanding the range of Sony spatial sound tech, as well as creating applications for experiences of new users. All right, that's a lot to listen to, right? But how does this basically overlap with Jasmy, right? Like, get to the point. That's okay. I do appreciate the info from Menalogware, but you got to keep in mind that, for instance, there is multiple people that are part of this. There's this guy, his name is Junichi Rikamoto. He's, of course, connected to AR, augmented reality. He conducted enhanced, perception of reality and creative immersive experiences. He was part of the directional auditory back in 2022. It's a brain-computer interface. I know it's a lot taken. Listen to me for a second. BSI that uses electrophallogram, I cannot pronounce this right, EEG, that we covered before, and is basically induced listening for auditory stimuli of different directions. Now, the goal basically is to explore the potential of using directional auditory perception for BCI applications. Basically speaking, that this tech was a concept of augmenting real world with virtual objects and characters that can interact with the user and environment. One of the features of living augmented reality is the use of spatial sound to create realistic and engaging scenarios. Augmented reality, at least back in 1999, had a system that allowed users to communicate through physical and even digital spaces while wearing a wearable device. The device can capture and even display visual and auditory information from surroundings, as well as generate synthetic sounds and image to augment reality. So I'm going to show you guys this for a second. Let me pull this up. And here's an example of this. And here we go. This is brain-computer interface using directional auditory perception. Give you some of those examples of what we just talked about, right? See how this is literally tracking everything this guy's doing. I guess his brain. It's an abstract using all this stuff tied into EEG. Okay. Getting back into this. All right, let me pull this up. Hiroki Kitano, who's this professor that I'm going to reference here in a brief minute, and Junichi Rikamoto are both prominent Japanese scientists, of course, who have worked at Sony Computer Science Laboratories, which is Sony CSL. They have collaborated on several projects related to artificial intelligence. And again, remember that, robotics, and even human-computer interaction. Now, according to Wikipedia, which, let's face it, is a good source for just general knowledge and so on. It's not a good source for providing like linked references and so on. At least for the collegiate level, they won't let you do that. But on his Wikipedia, Kitano is the head of Systems Biology Institute, SBI, all right, not SBI Japan, two different things. He's also the Senior Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Sony Group Corporation, Chief Executive Officer of Sony Research Inc., and also he is obviously part of Sony CSL. He's also a professor at Okinawa Institute of Science, and he's also recently talked about his vision of helping AI scientists and how they will help revolutionize scientific discovery. According to Google Scholar, who is Rikimoto, who is a professor at University of Tokyo, fellow in Sony CSL, he has published many papers and topics, of course, on augmented reality, wearable devices, gesture interfaces, and so on. Some of the joint publications, and so he's just done a bunch of different books and whatnot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an actual picture of this, just a second, from Niantic Labs and also game developer. Hold on a second, let me pull that up. So here it is. Here's some of the stuff that he's obviously worked on. Some of you guys are familiar with this. Back in February 15, 2022, Niantic and Sony collaborated with, of course, this audio AR augmented reality. There's a video about this. I'm not going to play that because it's not really needed. All right. But it talks about the head of mobile product business division, Sony product business group, Sony Corporation, linking Sony spatial sound technology with Niantic's game content, because we were talking about the whole thing of gaming. Quote, Sony is a global brand with a wide range of audio products, excellent audio, tech. Yeah, we know that, right? Getting back to this for a second, let me show you this other one real quick from the gamer side of things. So here it is from gamedeveloper.com. And again, just kind of pounding it home just that much more. Not interested. Let me read on. Niantic and Sony partner to develop auditory AR tech. Again, just showing you that's from a different source, where they all agree that this is amazing technology in regards to augmented reality. All right. What I want to show you is a little bit more about this. And I know it's kind of hard to take this all in. It's a lot of information, right, about how it overlaps with Jasmy and whatnot. But basically speaking, Hiroki Kitano and Junichi Rekimoto are both prominent Japanese scientists who have, in fact, worked at Sony Inc., and they have collaborated on several projects related to artificial intelligence, robotics, and human-computer interaction. According to Wikipedia, all right, before we show you a nice little outline here, Kitano is the head of Systems Biology Institute, Senior Executive Vice President, Chief Technology Officer over at Sony Group Corporation, and also Chief Executive Officer over at Sony Research Inc. and CSL. He's also professor at Okinawa Institute of Science. I already mentioned that, apologize. But according to Google Scholar, all these guys are all tied into all these crazy things, and they have all this research and so on. Here's the thing from Wikipedia. Let me pull that up for a second. I'll show you a picture of what this guy looks like. All right. I know it's going a little bit later, but on the chopped up version, it'll be a little bit better. So here he is, born in 1961. I mean, shoot, how old would that make him? Basically, he's born in 61. He's like 60. Was he about 62? I imagine about 62-ish. Anyway, very, very robust background, right? Senior vice president, all this stuff that we talked about, right? Education, very impressive. Kyoto University, with the Carnegie Mellon. But what stands out is all this stuff that he did in regards to robotics, contributing to systems biology. I mean, just crazy stuff. These things that we're talking about in regards to a lot of things that we talked about in the past and so on, all ties into the concept of Society 5.0 and basically what Jasmy's trying to accomplish. Now, what I want to do is obviously want to take you to a little bit more about this and show you this other guy as well. Jun Rikimoto. Let me pull that up as well. He's a professor of interfactually initiative in information studies at the University of Tokyo. And here is finally some of the juicy stuff. He's also the co-founder of Kujit. Now, the old channel, I covered the deep dive of the why Kujit was big for Jasmy. They're working obviously with Kujit. So that was already established. And a deputy director of the Interaction Laboratory of Sony Computer Sciences Laboratories. Rikamoto has published more than 100 research articles on the field of human-computer interaction. His work spans spans over the human-computer interactions, augmented reality. We already established that. In 1971, the age of 10, before personal computers existed, Rikamoto bought a textbook on computer programming. He would also write his own programs on paper, manage his results. So he's amazing. He's obviously a doctor of science from Tokyo Institute of Technology in 84, 86, and 96, respectively. A lot of background about him. He returned to Japan in 1994. Rikamoto started working for Sony Computer Science Laboratories. 5 years later, in 1999, he founded and directed the CSL's Interaction Laboratory. From 2000 to present, listen to this because this is part of that Jasmy connection. In 2007, Rikamoto became a professor of interfactually Initiative for Information Studies at the University of Tokyo. In that same year, he co-founded Qjit, which obviously they got that thing going on with Jasmy. You can always go back to the little channel and view that if you want. Just don't subscribe over there. Anyway. Alongside two other researchers from CSL. Since 2011, Rikamoto has been a deputy director at Sony CSL. Now, here are some of his most notable research and inventions. Just hear me out for a second. He's got this thing where he published research papers such as mobile wear and computing, VR, information visualization. Here's some of his work. Smart Skin. It's a sensor for the freehand manipulation of interactive surfaces. So remember how we talked about, what's it called? Morphiria? Talking about that thing that it will scan your finger, not your fingerprint, but your actual vein. Think about that for a second, right? So he's also part of that. How about a pick and drop, a proposal of new user interfaces for directly manipulating multiple computers, augmented surfaces, design users to interchange information between their devices, including laptops, digital table, wall displays. Interesting. Cybercode, a way to digitally tag objects with AR. And last, Gesturus, a gesture touch to device to interact with nearby computers via gesture commands. All part of what, guys? The Internet of Things. Think about it. Don't overthink it. All right. I'm going to jump back to this for a second. The reason why I want to point out all this to you is because there's a lot to obviously get into. And I think it's all worth pointing out. Now, here is this whole thing about OIST Professor Hiroki Kitano elected as member of UN High-Level Advisory Board on AI. This is recent. Let me see if my settings are good. I'm going to share this with you, whether we have 24 people or 5. Always could chop it up later. So look at this for a second. He was elected as a member of a UN high-level advisory body on AI. One of the experts he supports is the international community's effort to govern artificial intelligence. Remember we talked about, for instance, with ISO TC 307, we have, for instance, working groups, and the people are tied into those working groups. Remember with ISO TC 307, that quant network standard, we talked about specifically AI standards. So that's always something that's worth pointing out. But here he is. Wow, what a thumbnail, right? Dr. Hiroki Kitano, adjunct professor at OIST, became one of the members of the high-level advisory body on AI launched on October 26, not that long ago, guys, by United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to examine how AI should be governed. Interesting. Because you want to know something else? On another previous one where I talked about how Binance needs to take Jasmy out of the innovation zone, I mentioned Kunitake Ando, that connection to JIN, how he's part of the chairman advisory panel, if you will, and how JIN, Japanese or Japan Innovation Network, is already an ISO standard, right? Through ISO, was it 56002? I don't know, it might be 52002, I can't remember. But that particular standard. So they, as in Kunitake Ando, have already been exposed to ISO standards. Now enter into this whole thing of the UK, and if anything, I think this pounds on even that much more on why in the future Jasmy will need to work with Quant for the ISO TC 307 standard, because this guy and where he's positioned, So look at this for a second. Look at what it says. October 26th, United Nations Secretary General, right? You said that, how AI should be governed. The body expected to play a unique role in making AI work for humanity with its global, interdisciplinary, and gender balanced membership consisting of 38 experts from 33 countries from various fields, including government, private sector, research, academia. I mean, academia would definitely be not only this guy, this professor, but also Kunitake Ando, right? Remember, he heads up a particular university. I don't know if you guys remember that stuff. But in civil society organizations, as well as permanent member of the UN Secretariat, expected to play a unique role in helping AI work for humanity. So we talk about Jasmy having these guys that are the plugs or the connectors and so on. This guy is definitely somebody that shines and stands out. Some of the activities of the body include building a global scientific consensus on risk and challenges, explores ways to use AI for sustainable development goals, strengthen international cooperation on AI governance. Professor Kitano joined OIS's predecessor, the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology Promotion Corporation, in 2009 as a principal investigator. Since then, as a principal adjunct OIST, he has led various cross-disciplinary projects, including all these ones you see here, and of course, some of the things I told you about, you know, what he had going on with Sony. Back in, what's it say, May of 2023, not that long ago, he also served as a member of the AI Strategy Council convened by the Japanese government. My God. In response to appointment by the United Nations, listen to this is good info and recent. In response to that appointment to the United Nations high-level advisory body on AI, Professor Kitano said that the development of AI-related tech will further accelerate the pace of progress and will have an unprecedented impact on us. At OIST, we are pursuing a project to develop, think about this, a project to develop AI scientists. They'll be able to make scientific discoveries in a highly autonomous manner and fundamentally change the way science is conducted. We are now entering industrial revolution, hence the fourth industrial revolution. Proper development, governance, impactful tech, including the realization of such AI systems, will be, of course, crucial. Very significant that the United Nations established a body for this, and you can believe that it is his honor and great responsibility to be one of the members to be appointed the co-chair of one of its working groups. One of its working groups. Took a while to get to that, right? But I mentioned these things for a reason. I mentioned the ISO TC307, right? AI is part of that working group. They have multiple working groups. And where he's positioned with like where this is at in the world, you know, was it the UK, also the United Nations? I mean, it just, I don't know. Say what you want. The research, as the saying goes, trumps FUD 110%. So some people will say, well, there's no real quant connection. Okay. But we have established that, for instance, Jasmy's already connected to JIN, obviously through Kunitake Ando. And Ando already has experience with ISO. They're already certified ISO with JIN. Then, of course, there was everything we talked about before. So to me, this further solidifies the whole thing of ISO TC307 because, boom, there you go. Just throwing that out there. All right. There's a lot more to this. And if anything, I know it seems like it's kind of a long show tonight, but I might not be here tomorrow, so might as well get into it. And you can always watch the chopped up version anyway. So basically, it's like this. And I'd be asking the same question if I was you. Has Professor Hiroki Kitano and Kunitake Ando of Jasmy, former Sony executive, ever worked together on anything while at Sony? Great question. Basically, don't have anything solid in that regard, but what I do have is very interesting and peculiar, right? And that is basically this. Hiroki Kitano did, in fact, work at Sony Computer Science Laboratories, CSL, from 1992 to 2002. His research areas, of course, obviously include AI, robotics, and systems biology. He co-founded several companies, including Sony CSL Research Laboratories and what is called as RoboCup, not RoboCop, like the movie. Now, in regards to Kunitake Ando, right? Ando-san worked at Sony from 1989 to the year 2000. So there is that time period where their paths could, collided or came across each other. And some people say, well, that's kind of a stretch. I mean, just because you have a guy working on, not these specific people, but just because you have a guy working on a Sony PlayStation or a Walkman or Discman doesn't mean they work together. Hey, great point. But were you aware that from 1989 to 2000, some of Kunitake Ando's research areas did, in fact, listen to this, include AI, natural language processing, and even machine translation. So I'm willing to bet they did work together. Ando was also a co-chair of the Japanese Society for what? Artificial Intelligence, which is called JSAI, because it's Japanese Society for Artificial Intelligence, SIG on natural language processing. So I'm literally willing to bet that they did do some work in the past. Based on their overlapping periods at Sony itself and research interests, it is possible that they did in fact collaborate on projects. However, of course, there's not specific evidence. And of course, I'm not going to state that I have proof, but I'm willing to bet that's the case. Now, keep in mind, if we're going to go further into it and connect the dots in regards to, you want to call this an investigation or whatever, right? Sony CSL publications. This database contains publications by researchers, of course, at Sony CSL, hence why you saw this particular professor, including Kitano and also Ando. Basically, one could say that if you search for papers for both their names as authors, you will, in fact, I should say, see that they work together, maybe at some point, if you decide to nerd it out. Am I willing to spend days on research for that? No, not really. But what about conference proceedings? Well, both Kunitake Ando and Professor Kitano have presented papers at numerous conferences. We could very well search for their presentations if we chose to do so. We could try to find the same conferences, see if they might have been, their collaboration at that particular point, if a person was going to do that. I am not willing to spend that much extra research to do that, but if somebody wanted to, they could do that. Maybe somebody from the Jasmy research community wants to do that. Awesome. Go for it. See if you can find out some info. I will welcome it and I'll cover it again. Of course, I looked in news articles. I didn't see any, but of course, researchers can find various news articles if they want to be more extensive about it, to find their work at Sony, see if there's any mentions of them, of course, working together. I already tried doing that, didn't find anything, but that's what's going on with that. Now, what about some of the connections in regards to Professor Hiroki Kitano and, of course, Jasmy specifically? Well, this isn't proof, but from what I saw on the rumor mill, it's basically like this. And again, I wish I could prove this. I can't. But, hopefully somebody from the research community can verify this. But apparently, Professor Hiroki Kitano served on the advisory board of Jasmy from June of 2017 to February 2019. I don't know if that's exactly true. I wish I had a little bit more to share with you, like some evidence, but it does suggest that he may have been involved in the early development of the project and provided, of course, strategic guidance, because let's face it, both him and Kunitake Ando working in AI in the past, time frame of when they worked for Sony matches up. You also got to keep in mind in regards to research collaboration, while there's no publicly available sources that will confirm or deny direct research collaboration between Professor Kitano and Jasmy, you have to keep in mind there is expertise, or his expertise, in the form of AI and data science. It's possible that Professor Kitano may have very well collaborated with Jasmy on projects related to these specific areas. Specifically, I would say AI. And if anything, look where Jasmy's going into with this layer 2 AI blockchain solution. Now, both Professor Kitano and Jasmy do share interests, obviously, AI and blockchain, like just mentioned. And they do have a strong interest in the potential of AI and blockchain tech. Jasmy, of course, aims to leverage these technologies, true, to create a secure and transparent data-driven society. While Professor Kitano has conducted extensive research and produced many different publications and so on, that's even referenced from the new things of what Sony's trying to do, and I'll show you that here in a bit. He has conducted extensive research on AI applications in various fields. This shared interest suggests that they may have interacted or collaborated, of course, in this area. I'm going to lean towards yes, but we won't know this. Could be due to NDAs and so on. Now, there is, of course, limited public information, and that's just the way it goes. But there's some points to consider for you, me, and so on as Jasmy enthusiasts and holders and so on. So, for one, Kunitake Ando, or not Kunitake Ando, excuse me, Professor Kitano. His research interests are broad and encompass various aspects, of course, of AI. Of course, includes robotics, systems biology, and computational life sciences. It is possible that his connections, of course, to Jasmy is more specific to one or more of these areas. Further information about the relationship between Professor Kitano and even Jasmy may be available through, like I said, private sources or official company documents. It just might be restricted because of NDAs. And that's just the way I look at it. Another thing I was going to mention basically is the whole thing of, being part of the advisory board, right? For Jasmy from June 2017 to February 2019. I really try to find some good information in regards to that, but I wasn't able to get anything solid. Okay. And this is from hopping around all sorts of different, like Reddit and, Discord, you name it. Right. But basically speaking, you got to keep in mind there's several sources that do support the information, and one of the main sources claims, and I haven't done the Wayback Time Machine, and if anything, I don't have an old white paper that was like revised. If somebody does from the community, that'd be awesome. But from what's mentioned, according to the 2018 Jasmy white paper, is that it lists Professor Kitano among the advisors on page 11. I went to the current white paper. I didn't see nothing jack diddly squat about that. So again, I wish I could have it. But while the time frame of his involvement is not explicitly stated, keep in mind the publication date suggests his association with Jasmy predates, of course, 2018. I mean, just because it doesn't show in the white paper doesn't mean it's not there with the revised one. In regards to his website, excuse me, Professor Kitano website does mention involvement with Jasmy as an advisor in the past. Again, I haven't gone onto the Wayback Time Machine to verify this. Again, I didn't want to make this like 10 hours worth of research. Some of our own research guys from the from crypto Twitter can look into it if you want. But the specific dates are not mentioned, and it corroborates his association supposedly with the company. Supposedly, in regards to media articles, there have been articles that were published around 2017 and 2018 that report on Professor Kitano's role as an advisor to, of course, Jasmy. And if that is true, that is huge. These articles might not directly mention Jasmy, but some people do kind of connect the dots because they feel as though he did provide additional supporting evidence in regards to AI. There's apparently other archived information. I have looked more into the white paper. I can't pull it up. So there is that. It is not a nothing burger, but it's out there if somebody wants to look more into it, is what I'm trying to say. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump over to some of this profile about him for a second. Here it is. Here's his profile. This is straight from AI.Sony. It's a particular short biography on Hiroki Kitano, provided also from Google Scholar. Here's his profile. I already named off most of the stuff. It talks about some of his publications, has a blog. It goes way, way back, right? You can see pretty much all this stuff, press releases, all this stuff, right? All right. What I want to show you is a video, because you guys kind of need a video instead of just old Max harping about this stuff. So I want you to listen to this, and it talks about learn more about Sony and the type of people we are looking for to join our team. Interesting. All right, let's go ahead and play this. Here we go.
We are interested in working with people that are eager to learn from others. We care about people. Like Sony is a company that cares about the artists and creators. And I think that's been the case throughout its history. And I think that's just the part of our DNA is a uniqueness to us and it's our strength. I feel that's very important.
When we hire people for the organization, the things that I look for the most are people who are intelligent, work well in a team, and are highly creative. I find the team is most successful when people have the ability, when they run into a problem, to think of many ways to try to solve it, and then discuss and debate the merits of each direction, and then agree and go forward as a team in one of those directions.
So people, instead of working for the company, is working in the company with their missions and with their dreams. And that is definitely the train here that we're going to capture. That makes us realize how important it is to provide an ideal workplace for the people to work here so that they can stay with us longer. People share the same values, share the same purpose, and that's the best way of collaborating.
Best way at collaborating. I don't know. I find this stuff to be pretty interesting. Maybe some people don't, and that's okay. Here we go. Check this out. Here's this feature from August 9th. I think we shared this a while back, maybe from a different source. But it goes on to mention former Sony execs laying down data security gambit to tech giants. When Kazumasa Sato was assigned to Sony's Corp Information Technology section, was a fresh economics graduate in 1980. He was baffled. Look at this for a second. This is good stuff. Maintaining information system using IBM mainframe computers was not precisely what he envisioned. But the funny thing is, Jasmy, of course, ends up using Hyperledger Fabric through what IBM provides anyway. Gives a little history, right? But here's some of these bigwigs, right? You obviously have Kazumasa Sato in the beginning, and these two other gentlemen. The one I want you to put focus on is the guy on the far left right here. Okay, you may be wondering why that is, and if anything, I'm going to share why that is here in a brief moment. So I want to get into this for a second. Let me see. I'm going to pull this up. Oh yeah, about the bank. Hold on. Yeah, that guy on the far left is Hidehiko, Kakinuma. He is part of the wealth experience launching new business, including Sony Bank Inc. Again, excuse me, back to the whole beginning of the outline. Because we were talking about finance democracy and, obviously the whole thing of, insurance, like, level 8 was talking about. But it says now serves as executive officer in charge of marketing at Jasmy. Now, of course, a lot of people have criticized Jasmy not doing enough of the marketing and so on. But he now serves as of last August. So will things change? I don't know. Maybe some people feel as though not much. But the emergence of blockchain tech is a really important factor. The 56-year-old executive said, with that, we can create a system that gives back to users when dealing with personal data. With various options under consideration, Sato says his ultimate goal is to combine his tech with AI. Again, everything we're talking about tonight comes into full circle, in my opinion. It says, while interest in generative AI such as ChatGPT is booming, he said there is always a risk that if one enters sensitive information, it could be absorbed into the system and lead to unintended data leak. That's the whole need for a PDL. The combination of Jasmy's data security tech and AI could create a kind of AI optimization for personal use without worrying about data security. Yeah. Look at this for a second. Such an AI could be installed into various devices such as cars, smart speakers, among other things, he added. Remember how we talked about this with that professor at the beginning? I mean, think about it. I mean, just because it doesn't say they're connected, does definitely seem like they're working on the same thing, right? I think we agree on that. If people feel threatened by exposing their personal data, they become reluctant to utilize data, he said. But if we were able to manage our own data on our own, it would surely make the world more fun and convenient. Interesting. All right, let me take you to. Let me share something, some of my notes with you guys. So basically, it's like this. We talked about this whole thing of Sony Bank Inc. Okay, I want you to understand that there is significance in regards to Sony Bank Inc. For one, Sony Bank Inc. holds a significant position in the Japanese financial landscape, or of course, or I should say, for several different reasons. They are a pioneer in online banking. Back in 2001, that's when they were founded. Sony Bank was one of the first online banks in Japan. I just love how it mentions first. Jasmy, the first, crypto in Japan. Sony Bank, first online bank in Japan. Enter into, the whole thing of who you have, for instance, enter in Hidehiko Kakanuma, who's part of Sony Bank Inc. I mean, when we tie everything together, all these guys are the pioneers and the first of their kind. It's very, very interesting. Anyway, I throw that out there. So, yes, one of the first online banks in Japan, offering a convenient alternative to traditional brick and mortar institutions. This early adoption of digital technology helped pave the way for the growth of online banking in the country. So in my opinion, the whole thing of, people say Jasmy has no experience when it comes to finance democracy is absurd. They have a bunch of experience if you're willing to take more of the deeper dive and connect the people. Here's the plug. Here's Connect. All right. What about Sony Bank in regards to a market leader in innovation? Today, as we speak, Sony Bank is one of the largest online banks in Japan. That is so cool, because now we could tie in the whole thing of, do we get to the path of mass adoption, and especially when it comes to finance democracy? Do you have a plug other than Genki Oda? The answer is what? Back to Mr. Hidehiko Kakanuma. It's going to take me a while to get used to saying that name. Okay? So they have a large customer base, strong reputation for innovation. They have implemented various technological advances, including, listen to this, AI-powered customer service and mobile banking solutions. How cool is that? They do have a focus on customer satisfaction. Sony Bank consistently ranks high in customer satisfaction surveys, receiving accolades for its user-friendly interference, responsive customer service, and competitive rates. This commitment to customer satisfaction has contributed to the success of a highly competitive Japanese banking market. That is so cool. Because if anything, what about all the retail criticism that Jasmy gets about not doing enough marketing? If this guy, Mr. Kakanuma, is tied into this and he is now the new head of marketing, I think that's a step in the right direction. All right, Sony, the Sony Bank, they have a subsidiary of a global conglomerate. Been talking a lot tonight. As a subsidiary of Sony Financial Holdings, which itself is part of the multinational conglomerate of Sony Group, Sony Bank benefits from the resources and brand recognition of its parent companies. This strong financial backing, of course, allows them to continue innovating and expanding their services. They have, of course, a contribution to the financial inclusion. Again, back to the whole thing of Jasmy and finance democracy. By offering its services exclusively online and eliminating the whole need for physical branches, Sony Bank helps to make banking more accessible to people, of course, in rural areas or which there's limited mobility. I think that's big. I think Jasmy's going to do some huge things because of this plug, this Connect. We talk about financial inclusion. We talk about specifically when it comes to the likes of Stellar, right? Giving access to the unbanked. Sony Bank in itself provides access to the unbanked in an online way. So these rural areas, limited mobility, being able to contribute to the greater financial inclusion and promote a more equitable financial system, of course, in Japan is a massive win where Jasmy is going here in the future with finance democracy. All right, in conclusion, how does this all impact the financial banking industry? Well, the success of Sony Bank has significant impact, of course, on the traditional banking industry in Japan. And if anything, it has led to increased competition and innovation, of course, in the sector, forcing traditional banks to improve their digital offerings. Think about that, digital offerings, and offering customer service to stay basically competitive. Overall, Sony Bank Inc. is in fact a significant player in the Japanese financial landscape, and basically the global backing and customer satisfaction that contributes to financial inclusion is going to be massive, and this impact on the traditional banking industry as well is going to be huge. All right, what I'm going to do now is I want to show you on this next part the patents of inventor Hidehiko Kakanuma and why it's so significant. So we've been covering a lot about patents today. Talked about Dr. Craig Wright on the BSV segment. Now this is back to Jasmy. Hidehiko Kakanuma, of course, has filed for various patents to protect the following inventions. This list includes patent applications as well as pending patents in the United States Patent Office. So look at this for a second. Information processing device, video playback method, program, video playback system. Data patent. Look at this. February 20th, 2018. The signee, Sony Corporation, filed on October 3rd of 2013. It was a grant. Who's part of this? Hidehiko Kakanuma and also Kazumasa Sato. You have some of these other ones. Look at the dates. Filed in 2013, published 2014. Kakanuma and Sato. And just numerous examples of both of these guys. Numerous examples. Okay? Even back to 2002, so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to show you some more information. And I'm going to take you to the piece that was written up about him, shared from Neo X Tricks. So shout out to Neo. Here it is. This is good stuff. Mr. Hidehiko Kakanuma, managing director of Jasmy, said about blockchain former telecommunications analyst during his career at Sumitomo Bank and Sony, he followed the development of internet since its inception. As the internet grew, he realized it was an innovative technology, blockchain. Therefore, he predicted just like the internet changed the world, blockchain would also have a huge impact on the world. He thinks that a phenomenon similar to the IT revolution will be repeated with the advent of course, blockchain. This is why we decided to take the challenge of entering as quickly as possible. Interesting. Okay, there, of course, there he is. Let's jump back. Let's go ahead and highlight some of the key patents. So here we go, back to this whole thing. And here is some of the recent patents. Instead of just like, Max is just going to give me something from 2011 or 1992 or something. No. Vehicle control apparatus. Abstract. Provide a vehicle control that can correctly determine that lane changing is possible in a situation by accelerating or decelerating. An ego vehicle can perform the lane changing without interfering with an obstacle that raises comfortability for the driver. In the vehicle control apparatus, target trajectory performing lane changing under restriction if not entering an entry prohibition region is calculated. A determination section determines whether or not lane change is possible based on at least information on a position of the ego vehicle in the target trajectory. In this case, where it's determined the lane change is possible, the ego vehicle is made to change lane by a use of target trajectory. Look what this is filed. January of this year, 2023. Publication date, not that long ago, October 12th, 2023. Right? And remember how we were talking about that one professor from earlier? Yeah. Hiroki Kitano. Interesting. Can I give other examples? Yes, I can. Here's one as recent as August 31st. Applicant Mitsubishi Electric Corporation. Once again, Kitano, Professor Kitano. Another one, August 4, 2020. Hiroki Kitano. Vehicle control device, satellite positioning, all this stuff that we've been talking about for a while. So there's so many examples here. Might make your head spin, right? On and on and on and on. All right. So we showed the guy from Jasmy. What about the whole thing back to Professor Hiroki Kitano? Well, what is the most significant patent for this guy, Kitano? Well, Professor Hiroki Kitano is a renowned figure, as we know, of course, in the field of robotics, system biology, obviously AI, but more specific is some of his notable patents, as patent number 6232722, robot behavior control system and method. This patent introduced Kitano's pioneering work of symbiotic evolution, where robots and their environments co-evolve to improve their capabilities, lay the foundation for self-organizing and adaptive robotic systems, influencing research in areas like swarm robotics and AI. This guy's connection to the other particular guy from Qujit, and Qujit is working with Jasmy. So there is that. What about this patent? U.S. patent number 9165429, method and system of stimulating and analyzing biological systems. It originally started in 2015. The patent describes Kitano's cellular POTS model, CPM, computational framework for simulating complex biological processes like cell migration and tissue development. CPM has, of course, become widely used tool in system biology research and drug discovery. He also has this other thing of a method and system of generating, evaluating hypothesis and biological systems back to 2014. But my point is, he has all sorts of different examples. Another thing that was recent was 2019. He has a method for aiding human decision making. The patent describes Kitano work as AI-assisted decision support systems, which combine human expertise with machine learning algorithms to improve decision making in various fields like healthcare and finance. Oh my gosh. You know how we talked about healthcare with, especially with Jasmy, you know, and the whole thing with the CARE project. CARE project is also partnered with Ripple. But healthcare and finance, interesting. AI decision support systems with healthcare and finance. So it's like Jasmy, basically, you have the whole connection of Internet of Things, IoT, and then you also have that whole connection of finance democracy. And then when you see somebody like this that literally has a patent that was made in 2019, it's like, wow. You know, I think these guys are all working together for the greater scheme of things. And what's another thing that we know? Former Sony executives, once again, and the time frame of when Professor Kitano and Kunitake Ando were at Sony adds up, and both of them did work in AI. There is some things to consider, and basically speaking, I do want to get into the last part of this, and that is, yeah, back to this whole thing. Let's share this for a second. This is, you know, Rekimoto, the guy with Qujit, basically. Everything matches up. The smart skin, the sensor for freehand manipulation, interactive services, everything we've shown for many, many months, maybe over a year now. And again, look at this, guys. Just to pound it home a little bit more. Rekimoto became professor of interfaculty initiative in the information studies at the University of Tokyo. In that same year, back in 2007, he founded Qujit, along with other two researchers from the CSL. And look where we're at with Sony. Sony CSL. Since 2011, Rekimoto has been a deputy director at Sony CSL. So again, everything lines up. Qujit working with Jasmy. You know, this professor that we have, you know, what's his name? It's hard to remember all these darn names. Professor Hiroki Kitano, his timeline with Sony, Kunitake Ando, both were going to, yeah. I could talk your ear off about this, obviously. And if anything, I don't want to really talk your ear off anymore about it. This was a unique deep dive. Maybe it ain't pound home every single aspect, but again, you can connect the dots here. I think the next big massive wave for Jasmy is when they get this whole AI blockchain thing going. Obviously, we're looking for the lockup, but don't let people flood you out of your Jasmy. If you made it this long, and if you're like me, you're in, some profits, like my profit margins anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000, depending on the recent market. Weather the course of crypto winter this long, you're trying to tell me that me, you, and everybody else can't weather it a little bit longer? See the course. This thing is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not a quick sprint race. You're literally competing in a, we call it like a super long decathlon, or really crazy marathon. You gotta make it to that finish line.